Today we're going to be taking a look at Pumpkin Jack on the Nintendo Switch. This one, it's mashing together Halloween with old school platforming, and as far as concepts go, I've heard a lot worse, that is for sure, but can it deliver a journey worth taking? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So Pumpkin Jack's story is first off one I really enjoyed. While it's easy to spot like countless influences, think like Nightmare Before Christmas, your medievals for sure, and even like Sleepy Hollow to a certain extent, I will say it still manages to very much carve its own personality thanks to some solid writing. Here you're taking on the role of Jack, the mythical Pumpkin Lord, and you're basically acting on behalf of the devil himself. You're out to take down his enemies. In return, your freedom to pass on to basically the afterlife. From here you'll essentially head out on an adventure that will take you across this world, meeting a wide array of enemies and kind of like friendlies that each have very unique personalities, including some seriously impressive boss moments which I did not expect. I think the story here delivered everything I expected. It's not overly complicated, but it is a great excuse to meet this cast, and honestly that's more than enough. It's like clear a lot of care went into their development, and it absolutely pays off because I was engaged throughout. It even throws in some self-aware humour for good measure, and I'm for sure a fan of that. So gameplay and what we get here is a relatively traditional 3D platformer. Enter one of the 6 levels, take down your foes, progress to that next like checkpoint, and solve the occasional like simplistic puzzle along the way. Controls easy enough: movement, jump, a single melee attack, a ranged attack which is actually a like crow that joins you for the ride, a talking crow in fact, and then inventory, which really should have just been called, weapon selection. You'll start though with one weapon, but as you face each level's boss, you'll unlock a new one, from a shovel to a sword to a scythe to a shotgun. This weapon selection for sure helped keep things feeling fresh. In like the 3D platforming genre, it can be very easy to get repetitive, and this always gave me something to look forward to. All this exploration though, platforming and combat, is then accompanied by 2 more elements. You have puzzle moments where you pop off your head literally and control it independently, and then what I would call like traversal mini games. Maybe you'll be on a boat and defending yourself, or a horse, or a flying gargoyle. In these moments, a decent amount, I will say, like they do land, but a couple they felt a tiny bit tedious and unfair. An early minecart part, for example, it's pretty frustrating. It didn't feel like the game was giving me enough information to succeed, and instead I was relying on trial and error. And then there's like a match 2 game, and it just slowed down the pace all a little bit too much. That said, there is fun moments though. The minecart moment, to be honest, once I kind of got it, I can't deny I thought about like Donkey Kong. And a boat moment that was a lot of fun outside of like one pain in the ass jump you need to make. Just know that for every like, let's say, 1 bad one, you're going to face like 2 or 3 good ones. So that's not too bad a ratio. The whole experience though generally is very fast paced, and I can already see this was built with like speedrunners at the back of the mind. Like the majority of the enemies, you don't really need to beat them, you can avoid them, just sprint right past them, and I can already imagine this becoming somewhat competitive. If like me though, the speedrunner life isn't for you, they do pack the levels with collectible crow skulls to find, and even another like super difficult item to find that I won't spoil. What I liked with the crow skulls was you can actually trade these in with like one of the stores for different outfits. So problems: it's a 3D platformer, defense isn't an option, there's no actual control for it at all, so it can be a little on the button mashy side at times. Also, this leads into the age-old problem for the genre: the camera can get stuck and give the worst possible angle. They've tried to overcome this by making things invisible, but it still doesn't quite work out. It definitely helps, it's just still, far from perfect. That's not a problem of the game though, that's just a problem, as I say, for the genre. Because of the camera though, just expect to make like mistakes occasionally. I killed myself by running into water I couldn't see, because that kills you instantly, or not being able to see that next enemy that's going to attack you from behind. The combat itself, as well, as I said, is simplistic, but I do wish they actually made it a little bit more complicated, especially an option where you could lock onto enemies. Here you're actually relying on like a soft auto lock, and it's not bad, but it's also far from perfect. My last 2 problems, these are kind of more obscure, but it did my head in, so I'm going to mention them. The attacks, they're not consistent. 90% of the time it's going to repeat the same pattern, but just occasionally it's going to include a slight variation, and it could have done with some like easier to recognize separation between the 2. Like for example, after a dodge, 90% of the time you're going to do a heavy attack. Sometimes though that won't happen. On the second level though, it gives you a spear which you kind of like thrust forwards. The problem is, on a couple of occasions I thrusted right off the edge of the platform, and I had no way of stopping that. Then the balancing moments, it slows you down to a snail's pace, including the jump itself. Don't really understand why. Let me choose my speed of movement, because like most people, the moment the game forces something on you, you do not want to do that. Overall gameplay wise, I've had fun with Pumpkin Jack, more than I expected honestly, and while it does have its problems, I like the fact they've taken the risk on what is a dated genre at this point by bringing along to the table a lot of extra elements, some that for sure work and some that, you know, no doubt miss. But you know what, not knowing what to expect next was a lot more exciting than one gameplay loop over and over again, so respect for that. I played it through in a couple of sittings and it took me about 6 hours total, and it was, as I said, a lot of fun, and it was the creativity that just kept me locked in as I was waiting for that next, like, you know, change of gameplay, change of pace. So graphically speaking, this is a good looking game on the Switch. Screaming I love medieval, that is for sure, and a host of like other pop culture. It would have been very easy for these levels to have felt disconnected and separate from one another, but they've done a good job of bringing some consistency to this world that absolutely makes sense. It's also again keeping things fresh with something new around each corner. Then Jack's animation is stunning as he swings his weapons around to take down like an array of different enemies. Now sure, it has that Tim Burton-esque like tone to it all, but it's also got just enough different to it to really make it not feel like a simple copycat. Problems? Not really much honestly, the occasional minor glitch where an object would like, you know, pop in, and then enemies, they do get a tiny bit repetitive towards the end game, but that really is about it. In fact, while I'm on enemies, the bosses are awesome, huge, towering beasts for the most part, and they for sure bring the challenge. Some even almost kind of remind me of like, you know, entry-level bullet hell sort of patterns that you need to figure out. Honestly, from a graphical standpoint though, I think they've done a great job with this one. Audio then, on first up, the soundtrack is stunning. It captures that whimsical Halloween-like style you would expect, but it actually throws in a number of like altered classical pieces that bring scenes to life, and they add great comedic effect. I gotta say as well, they really do build upon the intensity, and it definitely elevates the entire experience. Then you'll get the attack sounds from both you and your enemies, along with like jumps and everything else, but it's the music that really steals the show here. The only problem with audio, every line of text that pops up on screen, there's no recorded dialogue, but Jack makes this like grunt sound every single time. By the end of the game, it was driving me absolutely insane. They need to like give you an option to turn this sound off or just remove it entirely. It's absolutely not necessary. So overall, Pumpkin Jack is no doubt influenced by the classics of the 3D platformer genre, but it's still not scared to try some new things. Some of these work, some of these don't, but like I said, like, kudos for trying honestly, because it made the game feel unique and it helped it carve out an identity in a genre where it would definitely be easy, like I said, to be labelled simply, you know, a copy of something better. It's worth knowing here that for the most part, this was also developed by just one dev over 4 years, and it's kind of crazy to look at this and think one person made this. Not only that, but then we get delivered a stable Switch port. That's impressive in itself. Sure, like, it has problems, some dips with slow gameplay diversions, the combat that can be a little bit wonky at times, and things like forcing a slow pace or the trademark now poor camera of these style of games. But you know what? Like I said, I still had a great time, and it's also a decent amount of time since I've played like a 3D platformer that honestly caught me off guard, and that I think is where Pumpkin Jack's biggest success is. The story, the characters, the world, it makes it very easy to forgive the game's flaws. Today I'm giving Pumpkin Jack a good 7 out of 10. Fans of the genre, you should absolutely take a look here, especially if you like some Halloween goodness. Think like Nightmare Before Christmas. Thanks for watching. Will you be adding this one to your collection, or are you going to be spending your cash elsewhere? With that, shout out as always to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. Helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.